Good morning, Shasai Academy Middle School, and welcome to Friday. It is May 8th. It is a B day. That means associates for one of you out there. Actually, it's sixth graders. So you got associates today. Hey, quick little reminder before we get started too. Talk session for our seventh graders. It's been going on this week. Next week's the last one. So tune in for talk. So, hey, those are some announcements. We got some other things going, but it is Friday, May 8th, the B day. Let's get going. Couple birthday shout outs here before we get into talking a little bit about Washington, D.C. Almost done, 8th graders, and time to head home. Birthday shout outs. John Ree, happy birthday. Hope you find a special way to celebrate today. Andrew Patterson, happy birthday to you too. Nice job on the surfboard. So, great job, guys. Hope you find a special way to celebrate, but happy birthday to you all. All right, this is my last reminder. Today, 6th and 7th graders, a link's been sent in an email to your parents on how to sign up for your music classes, your athletics for next year, and for you, rising 7th graders, that means 6th graders, hey, you're looking at your language choices and what you're going to take next year, Chinese, Latin, or Spanish. So make sure you check out those videos, talk with your parents, get all signed up for next year. Big shout out, we've changed one thing too. We're going to have girls tennis in the fall. So 6th, 7th, and 8th grade girls, if you'd like to play tennis, we're going to do that in the fall this year. Boys, you get your chance to play tennis in the spring. So those are a couple choices that you need to think about for this next year. All right, so get on that link, help mom, dad work together, and make a plan for next year. All right, here we go. COVID-19 Form 2 Washington, D.C. field trip. It's day 3. It's our last day, our last chance to sort of talk about some things that we'll see on our journeys if we've been able to go. So I'm going to touch on some more monuments, a couple museums that we'll talk about, and share some more stories, maybe even sneak in little side things and some things that we don't normally see on our trip, but we try to do anyways. So here we go with some of those stories. All right. One of the first things I want to talk about is the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian is not just one museum, it's a series, I believe, of 11 different places and things to learn about, from art galleries to museums to a zoo, and a lot of it's located right in downtown Washington, D.C. on an area we call the Mall. The Mall is not for shopping. There are, little snack stands, but it's not a shopping mall. But it's this large open grass space that stretches from the Washington Monument east to the Capitol building. And along there are all these series of museums. Some of them we sort of break up into small groups and do, from the American History Museum to the Air and Space Museum to the Natural History Museum, the couple art galleries that are there. Those we break up and go in small groups and spend looking at some of the different artifacts. I always like the American History Museum because they got some cool cultural things like the Ruby Slippers and Oscar the Grouch. And so that's a great opportunity. You go to the Natural History Museum, there's got dinosaurs, and they got the Hope Diamond, the biggest diamond that we have, right? And so the Air and Space Museum, planes and so forth. Now there's an extension of that we do. It's called the Hazy Center. It's located out by Dulles Airport. And that's our last stop as we're heading out, as we go out there and we go through that Air and Space Historical Museum. Very cool because they have one of the shuttles in there. The whole shuttle, it's inside, along with lots of other types of planes and aircraft. So it's a really sort of cool experience. A lot of folks do those little flight simulators and spend their last few dollars before our ride home. All right, so one of the Smithsonian's, and this is the one I want to take the most time with, is the African American History Museum, because this is a very special museum. It's one of the newest downtown, and we actually spent a couple hours this morning going through that museum. It's really amazing, from the outside architecture and those bronze panels that reflect the light and catch our attention, to inside. And the story inside is told from the beginning of the African experience of enslavement through the history all the way to modern day. And it's incredible. They even use the architecture to set the tone as you first go in and you come out and you feel claustrophobic and squashed together in this experience of just trying to imagine what it must have been like to be on that slave ship. And a lot of history of the first people that were enslaved and brought here to this hemisphere, and the toil that they faced through the expansion of the colonies. Then it gets into Reconstruction, the time period after the Civil War, and some of the conflicts that ensued during that time, all the way through the Civil Rights Movement, and taking a look at the history there. And so there's a lot to see, and we spend a lot of time there reading and looking at the artifacts and getting a sense of what it's like for African Americans and their story as part of this American story. And so it's one of those museums I definitely recommend that you spend some time at gathering the stories and the history of this experience, from the roles they played in the Revolutionary War, to an auction block, to pop culture and the role in the Olympics and special events and music. This is where I learned about all kinds of things like the Green Book, and a book that was made for African Americans who were traveling to know what hotels and what restaurants were open to them. So truly an extraordinary experience, and highly encourage you that if you go to DC, that has to be one of your stops. Get a ticket and spend your time there exploring that history. So that is the African American History Museum, and one of our very first stops on this last day of our trip in Washington, D.C. All right, so we're on the bus. We're heading out. So our drive-by, here we're going to hit a couple quick places. One is the Pentagon. 5 sides, right? Well, it's 5-sided office building. Second largest office building, I think, in the world. And you can get from one side to the other in mere minutes the way it's designed. So it's pretty incredible. But this is where each of the branches of our armed services have their offices. And so they meet in there. Lots of discussions of how they can defend and protect the country. Right in the center used to be a hot dog stand. Trivial Pursuit question. So if they ask you what's in the middle of the Pentagon, tell them hot dog stand. The other side, as we drive by, we're going to see a 9/11 memorial, because this was one of the sites that was also hit by a passenger plane. Just as the World Trade Centers were hit in New York, a plane flew into the Pentagon, and there were several hundred people that lost their lives there, both in the plane and just a few that were in that side of the building when the plane hit. And so we see these benches that look like waves, maybe wings flying. We drive back through real quick as we're going through DC. Lots of embassies, so take a great chance, take a great opportunity to drive through DC and look for embassies. The Canadian one's right downtown. There's a cool little echo chamber. If you're with me sometime, I'll show you what that is. Ford's Theater. I got to point out Ford's Theater. That's where Abraham Lincoln was shot, and it's still there. It's a working theater. They have plays, and you can go in, and the park rangers tell you all about John Wilkes Booth, crept up, planned the attack, fixed the door, drilled a little hole, how he stepped in, how he shot Abraham Lincoln, and then jumped to the stage, breaking his ankle. 6 separate tyrannists, he yelled before he ran off the stage, and days later was caught and was killed in a barn where he didn't come out. And so a very tragic end to his life, and it's certainly a tragic end to Lincoln's, and perhaps changed the course of history. Right across the street from the Ford's Theater, the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. They have a great tour, so if you're interested in the FBI, make sure you go through that tour, get an inside look at that. They have a shooting range in there, which is sort of cool. They have lots of history of the 10 most wanted posters and some of the folks that they have tracked down, but that's in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Boy, after that, we're heading out. We got to get going. We got to get home. We got to get you home. That's when we'll head out of Washington, D.C. We'll pass lots of colleges and universities. Georgetown, you can see its spire sticking up in the air. The National Cathedral, sometimes we'll get to drive by that and see that. And this is our national church. Some really cool little artifacts there. They actually have a carving of Darth Vader's head as one of the little figurines there. So it's really incredible, very modern, and a moon rock in one of the windows. And so we would check that out as we're heading out of town. But we get out of town, we stop at the Hazy Center to see that shuttle I told you about earlier, and then we're gone, and we're home, and we get home late at night, and you all were a fantastic bunch. Every year, I just so enjoy this experience with the 8th graders, and I know as we come to the end, it's sort of sad that we didn't have this. And so I encourage you, Form 2ers, you 8th graders, reach out to each other. Continue to build those bonds and friendships, and think about ways that you can celebrate each other and your class, and know that we're looking to do that as well. So thank you all for joining me on this DC trip. You kept my tour guide skills sharp. I look forward to next year's trip and the trips after that. And if you have any questions, you want to know anything more about Washington, D.C., don't hesitate. Grab me sometime, shoot me an email. Glad to talk D.C. with you. But thanks for being here for this trip. It's Friday. Go out and get them. You watched. You got it. Have a great weekend. And I'll send you a schedule this weekend for next week. So thanks for being here. Have a great rest of the day.